For a long time, no one spoke of humans. They had once spread across the stars like fire and dry grass, moving fast and bold, reaching systems no one had ever dared to enter. But then they vanished. After something called the solar exodus, all human activity disappeared from galactic charts. Their colonies turned silent, their signals stopped, and their home system, the one called Sol, went dark. No one really knew what had happened to them. Some believed they had destroyed themselves, as many aggressive species often did. Others guessed they had moved beyond known space. A few old historians tried to warn the Galactic Council that humanity was not a species to forget, but over time, those voices faded. The galaxy moved on. New alliances formed, trade routes changed, and the younger species didn't even recognize the name Earth. Humans became a ghost story, used to scare children or spice up war games. But then something strange happened. It began in the distant edges of space, where explorers rarely went. A mining outpost failed to report back. Then another. Pirates tried to investigate, hoping to loot whatever had caused the problem, but they didn't return either. The Council sent a scout ship to find answers. What they received back was not a message, but a broken, shaking signal, the voice of a terrified pilot speaking in broken galactic standard, saying, "They're back, the forgotten ones, they never left." Then silence. Deep, endless silence. That was when the signal appeared. It was a simple transmission, carried across every communication channel in over 40 star systems. No threats, no introduction, just a short, sharp message. The stars are ours. Remember. The words were in Terran Standard, the old human language, and even after translation, it chilled everyone who heard it. Panic spread quickly. Old records were pulled from archives, and forgotten data about Earth and its people were reviewed. What they found disturbed them deeply. Humanity had been one of the most aggressive yet creative species ever known. Their ability to adapt to any environment, their fast learning, their strange emotional logic, and their sheer will to survive had made them unmatched. Their technology was not the most advanced, but they used it in unpredictable ways that often gave them the edge. The last war they had fought before disappearing had ended with their enemies begging for peace. But now, no one knew what version of humanity had returned. Were they the same? Or had they become something else during their long silence? The council met in secret chambers. Debates were loud and heated. Some believed the signal was fake, an old recording, maybe even a trap. Others, remembering human history, feared the worst. But they were too late. More reports came in. Ships went missing. Stations were found emptied, no bodies, just silence. The most alarming sign was that there were never any signs of battle. No burn marks, no broken hulls, no resistance. It was as if something had simply walked in and erased everything. Surveillance drones caught brief images, black figures moving too fast to track, ships shaped like daggers of light and shadow, and a sound, always the same, a low hum, like breathing in the stars. In the darkness of deep space, fear began to grow. A new name began to spread, not spoken openly, but whispered between traders and smugglers, the forgotten species. No one dared say humans out loud. The memories were too fresh for the older species. The younger ones asked questions, and the elders gave only one answer: pray they do not come here. But praying wasn't enough. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, a convoy of merchant ships vanished. All that was found was a single floating drone. It played the same message over and over, in every known language, and even in some forgotten ones. We gave you time. We gave you space. Now we return, not in anger, but in certainty. The stars are ours. Remember that. And with that, the galaxy knew one thing for sure: humanity was not dead. They had never left. They had simply waited. Waited for the right moment. Waited for everyone else to grow comfortable. Waited until their enemies forgot what true fear looked like. Now, that fear had returned, not through war, not through explosions, but through silence and mystery. They were watching. They were moving. And the galaxy would soon understand that the forgotten species was never truly forgotten. They were just preparing, The Galactic Council gathered inside the silver chamber of the core hall, the most secure place. In the galaxy, where leaders of many star systems had met for centuries, but this time, the atmosphere was filled with tension no one could ignore. The strange Terran message had echoed across dozens of systems. The stars are ours. Remember, it was too direct, too confident, and too familiar for anyone to pretend it meant nothing. But the Council, proud and full of certainty, refused to accept the idea that humanity had returned. The Eldari speaker claimed it was an old recording, perhaps left behind to scare or confuse. The Varric ambassador laughed and said it was a well-designed prank, and the mechanical minds of the Sin Tau network calculated a low threat level based on human extinction probabilities logged centuries ago. But behind the confident voices and political speeches, many delegates felt a silent fear growing inside them. In private, some of the older members still remembered the Terran Wars, the last time humans had roamed the stars. They remembered how humans had fought without logic, how they had turned hopeless battles into impossible victories, and how they had never backed down even when everything was against them. Still, the Council, as always, chose denial over action. A fleet was sent to the Edge systems to investigate the strange disappearances, led by Captain Dresho of the Cruxan Guard, a warrior known for his pride and cruelty. He mocked the idea of Terrans as he boarded his ship, saying that only ghosts feared ghosts. But what returned from that mission was not the full fleet, just one small escape pod, drifting in deep space, with its hull covered in strange marks, and inside, only one officer remained, shaking and whispering about shadows that moved too fast, weapons that made no sound, and soldiers who looked human but moved like machines. The Council reviewed the recordings in silence. The footage showed bright flashes, sudden darkness, and then only static. No warning, no negotiation, no survivors. And still, the Council debated. Some suggested preparing defenses. Others spoke of forming alliances with warrior races, but the majority still refused to believe that humans could be behind it. They said it was pirates using old Terran tricks, maybe rebels trying to stir chaos, or perhaps a hidden species copying human technology. One brave voice, a scholar named Liren Vale from the peaceful world of Juno, stood up during the session and warned the Council that this was no copy, no imitation. This was humanity returned, evolved, and watching. He spoke about the signals found on ancient frequencies only humans used, about the genetic traces left behind on silent stations, and about the message's tone calm, not angry, not vengeful, just certain. But they laughed at him. They silenced him. They called him a fool chasing ghosts. Outside the chamber, however, the galaxy was no longer calm. Border colonies began to report sightings of strange ships, silent, black, shaped like spears, and moving without heat signatures. Trade routes changed. Black market sales of Terran tech rose rapidly, and entire families left frontier planets without waiting for orders. Even among the Council's own worlds, fear spread quietly. Security forces increased patrols. Scientists worked without rest to understand the few pieces of Terran tech that had been recovered, but nothing made sense. Human technology, once familiar, now felt foreign. Their materials had changed, their power cores were too efficient, and their software was unreadable. It was as if the humans who returned were no longer the same beings who had once left. Whispers traveled faster than ships. Smugglers spoke of shadow fleets that passed by without sound. Miners told tales of strange figures watching them from cliffs. And mercenaries began refusing contracts in the outer zones, fearing they would vanish like the others. Meanwhile, the Council released a statement to calm the public. The recent disturbances are under control. There is no confirmed threat. Continue normal operations. But no one believed them. The lie was too thin, the fear too real. In secret, some species began building up their fleets, hiding weapons, training soldiers. Others sent envoys to find and speak to the humans, hoping to negotiate before it was too late. But there was no response. The humans said nothing more. Their message was clear enough. One single line, repeated only once across the stars, had done what years of war could not, made the galaxy nervous, uncertain, and quiet. And still, the Council denied the truth. They called it a game. They said it would pass. But deep inside, every leader, every soldier, every citizen felt the same chill when they looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, in the silence between systems, humanity was watching. Waiting. And the galaxy had no idea what would come next. It began without warning, without any announcement, like the silent swing of a hidden blade in the dark. A remote military outpost named Varnus 9, located on the edge of neutral space, simply vanished from all communication networks. It wasn't destroyed in a loud battle or caught in a massive explosion. It just went silent. No distress signal. No emergency beacon. One moment it existed, and the next, it was nothing more than a black spot on the map. The Council, still unwilling to accept that something serious had begun, sent a standard recon ship to investigate, expecting to find either a systems failure or signs of pirate activity. But what the recon crew found sent shockwaves through every level of command. The outpost had been completely emptied, no bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle, just scorched floors, missing weapons, and strange marks on the walls that looked like claw patterns, yet too perfect and symmetrical to be made by beasts. The computers were wiped clean, the power systems drained with surgical precision, and not even the surveillance records had been left behind. The only clue was a symbol etched into the center of the command room, a star broken in half, once known to be the emblem of the old Terran command. When this news reached the Council, they finally called for silence across all networks, hoping to stop panic before it could spread, but it was already too late. A second outpost was hit 2 days later, this time on the heavily guarded mining world of Charnas Theta. Hundreds of security drones were deployed there, elite guards patrolled the site, and even orbital cannons watched from above, yet none of them reported any threat. When the morning shift arrived, they found the entire night crew gone, all equipment stripped, and once again, the same broken star symbol carved into the control deck. This time, they also found a single sentence written in Old Terran. This is not a war. This is a correction. The message wasn't broadcast. It wasn't shouted. It was simply left behind like a whisper in a locked room. The meaning was unclear, but the fear it caused was powerful. A correction of what? And by who? Now even the most arrogant commanders began to feel uneasy. Defensive grids were raised. Patrols tripled. Weapon caches moved. The galaxy tried to prepare, but no one knew for what. It didn't matter. The third strike shattered all doubts. On the planet Erebos Prime, the capital of a powerful species known for its warrior caste, a massive human fleet appeared above the skies without using any known warp routes. Their ships were not bulky or loud like most others. They were black, silent, shaped like blades cutting through space, and each moved with the precision of thought. No communication came from the fleet. No demands. No warning. Within minutes, planetary defense satellites were turned off by unknown interference, ground turrets overloaded and exploded, and air support was scrambled only to be brought down mid-flight by invisible pulses. Then the humans landed. But not like an invading force, they didn't burn cities or destroy homes. Instead, they walked into government facilities, disabled military command centers, and vanished again before reinforcements arrived. Every attack lasted less than 15 minutes. And in every case, the only thing left behind was silence and the same message etched into walls or burned into digital systems. You forgot what we are. That line traveled faster than any news broadcast. Panic spread. Civilian worlds began evacuating. Former military powers who once mocked the idea of humanity returning now sent desperate messages asking for peace or forgiveness, but the humans responded to none. They did not speak. They did not boast. They simply struck, always with perfect planning and without casualties on their side. And as fears spread, many began to realize something strange. Humans were not conquering territory, not stealing resources or killing leaders. They were erasing symbols of control, disabling systems that had once belonged to them long ago, and leaving as quickly as they arrived. It was as if they were reclaiming what was theirs and making a point that no one could ignore. Every strike was cold, fast, and exact. But the true terror came from the silence that followed. Entire fleets were found floating in space with their crews alive but unconscious, weapons disabled and communication systems fried. It was as if the humans wanted them to survive just to carry the message back. The stars are ours. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement. The galaxy, once full of confident empires, now stood in quiet terror, watching every shadow in space, every flicker of light on sensors, hoping that it wasn't the next visit from the forgotten warriors. The council, finally broken by fear, met in secrecy and admitted what they had denied for too long. Humanity had returned, not with vengeance or rage, but with precision, planning, and a message that could not be ignored. And this was only the beginning. The first strike had not come from hatred, it had come from memory. The galaxy had grown silent, not because the humans had destroyed everything, but because no one truly understood what they wanted. Every empire, every council, every leader who once believed they were in control was now forced to sit and watch, not knowing what would happen next. The humans didn't speak, didn't negotiate, didn't ask for surrender. They struck like a shadow and vanished like smoke, leaving behind only questions and warnings that no one could answer. But deep within the central archives of the old Terran colonies, hidden beneath layers of dust and silence, a truth waited to be uncovered, a truth that would change everything. A team of independent researchers, exiled from the Council for their curiosity about human history, had quietly continued their work in secret. One of them, a young alien named Kales, believed there was more to the humans than war or revenge. He had read the ancient texts, studied the broken codes, and followed every encrypted signal left behind after each human strike. And then, one day, he found it a broadcast signal, not meant for control or fear, but a message left behind from Earth itself, hidden deep inside an old space station that the Council had buried and sealed off after the human disappearance. Kales and his small crew risked everything to reach it, bypassing patrols and automated defenses. Inside, they discovered an ancient AI still active after centuries, running on forgotten technology that none of them had seen before. The AI called itself Solari and welcomed them not with a threat, but with a question: "Are you ready to remember the truth?" As the team watched in silence, the AI began to reveal the full history of humanity, not the one told by the Council, not the version taught in schools, but the real story. The humans had never been defeated. They had never vanished because of weakness. They had left by choice. After building a powerful empire across the stars, they had discovered something far more dangerous than any enemy, an ancient, intelligent force hidden beyond the known galaxy, something that fed on war, hatred, and conflict. The humans had realized that every major galactic war, every sudden collapse of peace, had been influenced by this force. And rather than stay and fight it, risking the collapse of all intelligent life, humanity had pulled back, erasing their presence, wiping their technology, and hiding in the shadows to develop something stronger, something that could fight back not with fire, but with control, silence, and precision. Their return now was not to reclaim land, but to restore the balance before that force awakened again. Kales was shaken. The humans weren't the enemy. They were the last defense against something the galaxy couldn't even imagine. And every strike they had made, every system they had shut down, every outpost they had taken, they weren't acts of war. They were steps in a plan to prevent something much worse. Kales took this revelation to the stars. He sent the message across all secure channels, risking execution, exile, or worse. But the truth couldn't be ignored. As leaders listened, many refused to believe, but others started to remember stories from long ago, whispers of human heroes who spoke of dark stars, of ancient signals, of a war that never ended. Slowly, fear turned into realization. The humans were not bringing war. They were preparing for one, a war that no one else could win. And when the humans finally sent their first real message to the galaxy, it was not a demand, but a revelation. We are not your enemies. We are your shield. Let us finish what we started. Now the galaxy stood at a crossroads. The council was divided. Some still called for resistance, still afraid of giving humans any power again. But others, seeing the truth, understood that fighting the humans meant fighting the only hope they had. In the end, Kayles became a voice of reason, a symbol of trust between humans and the rest of the galaxy. He was invited aboard one of the human ships, not as a prisoner, but as a guest. There, he saw the real power of humanity, not just in their weapons or machines, but in their discipline, unity, and the quiet pain they carried for the sacrifice they had made centuries ago. They had given up everything to protect the stars, and now they were asking for nothing in return, just silence, cooperation, and time. And so, the revelation spread not with violence, not with destruction, but with truth. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, but as guardians. And the galaxy would never be the same again. After the shocking revelations shared by the humans, the galaxy was no longer the same. The old councils that once ruled with pride and arrogance now found themselves powerless in front of a truth they had ignored for centuries. The stars that once danced under their command were now watching silently as the true protectors stepped forward from the shadows. The humans had not returned for power or revenge. They had returned to restore balance and stop something far darker than any war the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships were unlike anything the current empires had, quiet yet powerful, fast but unseen, and built with technology that felt more like art than weaponry. The Council tried to resist, calling for unity among the races to stand against what they labeled as an invasion, but the people were no longer blind. Too many had seen the precision of the human strikes, how they only targeted ancient machines or hidden communication arrays long believed to be harmless. But now it was clear those targets were part of a deeper system controlled by a forgotten force, something beyond the edge of known space that once fed off war and chaos. Slowly, one by one, systems broke away from the Council and reached out to the humans, asking for guidance, not surrender. And the humans responded with calm words and powerful silence. They shared knowledge, maps of hidden threats, and ancient warnings from before the Council even existed. A new leadership began to form, not of titles or royal bloodlines, but of those who were willing to listen, to change, to prepare. This was not a war for territory. It was a preparation for survival. The humans began training teams from various species, teaching them how to build, how to protect, and most importantly, how to think beyond what they were taught. They didn't demand loyalty, they inspired it. Even those who once feared them began to understand the depth of their purpose. It wasn't about domination, it was about saving what was left before the darkness returned. And then, in the center of the galaxy, once the heart of the Council's rule, a meeting was called not by the old leaders, but by the new ones, those who had stood with the humans and seen the truth. For the first time in history, humans sat openly among the galactic leaders, not as guests or prisoners, but as equals. The air was filled with silence and tension, but also hope. A decision had to be made not about who would rule, but about what kind of future the galaxy would choose. The humans proposed something simple yet powerful, a shared alliance built not on fear, but on knowledge, defense, and mutual protection. No single species would control it, and no one would be forced to join. But those who did would gain access to human technology, strategy, and protection against the ancient force that was slowly awakening again. Some called it a risk. Others called it surrender. But many saw it for what it was: a chance to survive, a path forward. And when the vote was cast, it was clear the old order had fallen. The Council dissolved quietly, its buildings abandoned, its flags lowered without a sound. In its place, the new order was born. Not an empire, not a dictatorship, but an alliance shaped by hard truth and painful history. And while the humans remained distant and quiet, they stood at the center of it, not to rule, but to guide, to protect, and to prepare the galaxy for what was coming next. As the stars watched in silence, one thing became clear: this was not the end. It was just the beginning. And the new order would be ready,